Aggressive patience is almost like a jaguar in the brush waiting, right? All systems go. You can almost feel their breath. They're ready to strike. So if we're able, whether it's a drawdown or whether it's a normal day, to really be able to sit with ourselves and have that breath to what am I trying to accomplish here? Where do I need to be, right? As you're waiting, right? That's aggressive patience.
Sitting down today with Evan Marks, looking forward to talk about trading psychology, performance, what it takes to become a good trader and succeed long-term. So Evan, welcome back on podcast. Good to have you here and looking forward to talk trading with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome, definitely. So give me a bit of background about kind of who you are and what you do these days.
So my name is Evan Marks. I am founder of M1 Performance Group, which is a mental performance consulting group. I work with anywhere from NASCAR drivers, professional athletes, global CEOs, and especially Wall Street traders and portfolio managers. What we work on is the mental side of the game, which is, as I like to call it, the marriage between the why and the how. So we take psychoanalytical theory and we merge that with the latest research in neuroscience in order to really provide an optimal service for the people we serve.
When you work with, let's say, a trader, what exactly are they trying to improve or work on? Are they retail guys who want to become profitable? Are they more at the higher level wanting to perform better?
Yeah, they're usually higher level. My goal is to make good to great. So we work with a very simple formula. Performance equals potential minus interferences and resistances. So it's my job as a mental performance coach to understand what are the hurdles, obstacles, and roadblocks that are really preventing people from being optimal. So when you merge the psychoanalytical side, it's like, how are they raised? What is their programming, early childhood programming look like? And then when you talk about the neuroscience, how does the brain really work? So at the end of the day, my clients become students of themselves, right? Understanding, since this is a trading podcast, what's the difference between impulsivity and intuition? Like, everybody always wants to think about intuition, but if you don't know anything about impulsivity, you're going about the steps the wrong way in order to be optimal. It's like, it's the old, addition by subtraction. When we're able to take things out and really focus on what matters most, that provides a great road for excellence. Way before, I've been doing this 8.5 years. I'm 53 years old, but I spent most of my career on Wall Street managing money. So I did that for almost 25 years until I was about 46 when I retired and became a coach for about 8.5 years now. So I know the game pretty well. But as a coach, my experience is not your experience. And as a coach, I have to be able to separate the two. So whatever you're going through as a trader, portfolio manager, whatever you're doing in this finance world, that's your experience. So I'm here to support you in what you're trying to accomplish.
Interesting. So you mentioned performance equals potential minus interference. How do you figure out the potential part of things? Is it unlimited? Can you go as far as you want to go, or is there a cap to what you can achieve?
I think anything's possible. I'm one of those guys where if we could figure out where you're coming from and understanding what's holding you back, you're limitless, right? But there's, it's easy to say something like that, but there's got to be a structure in place in how we go about doing it. It's not like we're just going to go and just get as big as we want and that. It doesn't work that way. There's a sequence of events of how we stretch people. So what we like to call it is a mental foundation. So we set up these foundations that are very intentional about how we go about thinking, how we talk about emotions, because emotions are just data. How do we feel, choose a behavior, which is responding, not reacting, which then creates a new experience for you, which then internally, neurologically, starts building new pathways in the brain. So where you used to do something that no longer serves you, we're actually building new default routes in your brain. So this is what he does now or she does now. So it's really this game of repetition. People always ask me, how long does this take? And I say, I don't know, right? Everybody's wired differently. Because when we are just thinking about the outcome, we really lose and it diminishes our skill set. So it really is this sequence, this process, this structure that we put in place. It's very bespoke, right? Everybody has experienced things differently. So not everybody is the same. So as a coach, you have to understand who your client is and where they're coming from, and then actually where they want to go and what are they trying to accomplish. It's a very intense process, but that's why it's not meant for everybody.
Definitely. When it comes to interference, what are the common interferences you see in traders? What's stopping them from achieving that potential?
As children, sometimes we feel judged, right? Or we're embarrassed, or we have frustration, we have rage, rejection, like all fear of failure, right? So all these things, even though intellectually they know they're possible, there's an unconscious element that's wrapped around all these. So when I say these things, it's very intellectual, but we know there's an emotional blanket that goes around that. So it's our job to pick up on these interferences and reduce them as much as we can. It's judgment's a hard thing, right? So we're just meeting. I don't know how you were raised. What does your programming look like? So some of this programming doesn't work for you any longer. So sometimes we have to really erase it and build new things. There's some things that are helpful, right? That help you thrive. But a lot of stuff is survival based. That's no longer needed. So everybody has a different makeup. It's our job as coaches to understand that, to listen to what you're not saying, pick up on emotional patterns that are no longer helping you make the best decisions you can. So that's when I say interferences, there's a whole catalog of them. It's our job to pick up on them and really reduce them, right? Because interferences lead to impulsivity, right? And impulsivity is reacting. We don't want to be reacting. We want to be responding. So when we're feeling a certain feeling, like my assistant used to always say, you're always nervous. Well, nervousness to me was a good feeling. I didn't want to be nervous, but I knew how to behave when I was feeling that way. As opposed to running away, nervousness meant that I'm onto something. So that feeling actually was an intuitive feeling for me, but I had to get to know it, right? Feelings are very important. You can't put them on a shelf, right? When we make decisions, emotions are a part of that, but we don't want those emotions on the field. So it's that really awareness of understanding who you are, so we can consciously choose behavior that's beneficial, as opposed to just go get them, right? It doesn't work that way. There's got to be steps. There's got to be a structure, because when you build that, then you can leverage that. It's scalable, it's sustainable, right? And we can stretch you to see what you're really capable of doing.
If you work with, let's say, a trader and then an athlete, do they face the similar things? Is it the same things you have to work on with them? Or is the fact that trading has money with it, it's like different and different emotions that come up?
It's different emotions. When you think of professional athletes, right? Judgment, social media, all those things come into play. But also the frequency, right? So when you think about trading, the frequency loop is much quicker, right? Where else in the world can you feel every single emotion within a half hour, right? So that frequency plays on your nervous system. So where sports psychology is different than trading psychology. So how are we as traders able to put this mental space to make best decisions, even though I always say, we have to be very comfortable in the uncertainty, but we have to be very confident in how we behave. Whatever sport it is, there's design plays, right? We can push the outcome. In trading, you're dealing with uncertainty. So how are you able to navigate that when there's all this external data coming at you, plus the internal data that's going on? Trading, they always say, and I say, it's one of the biggest self-development games in the world. You really get to understand yourself, right? Because sometimes we're projecting onto the market. We want something to happen. We desire it. That doesn't work, right? So it's really understanding yourself and how are you, it's you versus the market. But at the end of the day, it's you v you, right? So how are you performing in this game? It's a very challenging game, right? I'm not saying it's obviously hard, but very doable. It's training. 90% is mental.
How do you train someone to be comfortable with uncertainty in trading?
It's interesting. It's a great question. Be curious, right? So we know that we're dealing with uncertainty. So how do we become more fluid, right? So like if you think about rigidity, right? Rigidity is this stiffness. Fluidity is being able to be adaptable within the realms of conviction. Like, I could give you the best information ever and the stock doesn't react that way or the market doesn't react that way. So how are we able to understand that, be flexible, and at the same time be able to recover and reset? So it really is this waiting, right? This weighing the odds. Where do I lie? How am I feeling about this? Where's my risk? Where do I need to be? So when you ask these questions, they're called self-exploratory questions. When we ask ourselves these questions, it puts us in a seat of influence. It makes us much more conscious. Because at the end of the day, my goal always is to bring the unconscious conscious, right? Because a lot of things we do are unconscious. So the better we get at understanding we're dealing with uncertainty, the only thing I can control is what? Me. And that's got to be repetitive, right? I always say, if we're going to lose money, let's do it the right way, right? We're not going to be able to get everything right. But if we are able to make best decisions, it definitely puts us in a better position, right? We don't know if they're right. Only time tells us that.
When it comes to performance, I think one of the key things is people are going to talk about goal settings and trying to set goals that you can achieve. What's your take on goals for traders and peak performance in general?
It's interesting when people start working with me, we don't lay out any goals yet. It's almost like what are we trying to accomplish behavior wise? Because a lot of people set goals and they never get them, right? And what happens when people think about goals, they think about the end. They miss all the steps in between. So for me, I have a philosophy that days, weeks, and months stack. So what's important now? Every day matters, right? It's a game of intentionality. So when I work with somebody, you have to start small. I'm not saying small in size. You have to be intentional with first steps. It's like almost going from A to B. Because when you're able to do that, you as a trader, you begin to trust yourself. That you say something and you do it, right? So you don't overload people. It's really starting the train of momentum. So it's small steps. Are we reacting too much, right? Let's say your issue is reacting. That's what we start focusing on. Why are you reacting? Are we setting expectation goals too much and we're missing all these steps? Then we got to slow down in order to speed up. Now, slowing down has nothing to do with taking your foot off the gas. It's really about the art of intentionality. Are we being intentional? Sometimes people think they are, but they're not. So it's really refining the focus of what needs to be done. Again and again and again. That's how you build foundations. So when you think about mental performance, it's training. So the goal is in the training. The byproduct is the result.
I know that people say, okay, you should set goals because it's going to drive your vision, then your vision helps you reach those goals. It seems like you look at the vision too, but you don't really focus on goals because the process matters more than goals.
Well, you set goals a little later on, right? So for me, the vision is these incremental steps. So once we start to trust ourselves that we can actually be committed, consistency with evidence builds confidence. Once we start going down that route, going, in that order, now goals come in. So you just can't just set goals, right? Because goals move, goals change. We presume, we think this is what it is and it's not. So the more exploration you do with somebody, we realize those things change. But in order to hit a goal, you got to believe you actually can do it. So why not start this way, build this confidence, and set goals that we know we can hit? because we've already now shown we have evidence that we can stay consistent with what we're trying to do, right? It's a little different way. So when you talk about vision, well, we do a lot of visualization, right? Manifestation, visualization. We know now through research that it's extremely beneficial. But why can't we vision what a good day looks like? What does a good performance day look like? Am I sitting upright? Am I speaking? Am I verbalizing how I'm feeling? What does my prep look like? All these things are foundational. I'd rather have that, know I can lean against that, than setting these lofty goals. So what happens then? You build the next foundation, and then you start to stretch. The byproduct's the result, right? I'm not foolish to say that trading is a money game. Of course it is. That's the result. But when we just think about the money, we're losing all this valuable time to get better.
What do you tell someone who comes to you and say, I want to follow my rules, but I don't have discipline to do it?
Well, rules are meant to be broken, right? So the question is, well, okay, let's put the rules aside. Tell me what your performance looks like. Tell me what your day looks like. Tell me what your morning looks like. Tell me what your evening looks like, right? What does your preparation look like? How is your sleep? Do you train? Do you work out? Give me more of a background, right? Because if we're not disciplined, at the end of the day, and I know you agree with this is a performance game. We get paid based on what? Performance. So we have to think of it that way. Where else are you making all these decisions so quickly? Where else are you feeling all these emotions so intensely? So we have to know, how is your day looking? Are you prepared? Are you mentally priming yourself? If you're not, take your expectations, throw them out the window. All this stuff matters. Being mentally healthy is a massive part of this business. It's not easy. But if you want to become good to great, this is what it takes. If you don't, stay in the right lane. There's a lot of people who do want to behave this way.
But what does it take to become good in your overall life? I know you mentioned sleep. You mentioned, of course, working out. You mentioned maybe how you prepare yourself. Is there anything else at play in it, and anything else you can do to make that process easier?
It's really giving yourself mental space to respond. We can do all this work, right? We have all this information. We can do all this prep, right? And there are many traders who have a plan, right? So people create plans to create certainty, but we're dealing with uncertainty. So it's really the structure you go about doing it. How do you make best decisions? Well, first of all, there's a feeling, there's an emotion. Then how do you put space between that emotion and the decision you're about to make, right? Well, that alleviates one thing, right? Impulsivity. So how do you get better at that? With the assumption that we're doing the prep, we're doing the work, we're taking care of ourselves. So when you talk about good to great, this is what it takes. It is this intense focus on these steps, right? So when you look at great traders, it's not like they just popped up out of nowhere. The people I work with, this is what we do. Now, it sounds intense because it is. But what happens is, over the course of repetition, it gets easier. It's never easy, but it gets easier like anything else. But you really have to be committed to this process.
What about the guys who seem to do everything right? They take the right trades and they hit a few losses, then they kind of spiral down with, now they size up, they take more trades, they make more mistakes, and they look back in retrospect, they know they did things wrong, they know they shouldn't do it, but they cannot kind of go away from it when they're in the moment, in real time.
So how do you get off at the right exit, right? So recovery is everything. Resetting is everything. You can't dismiss how you feel, right? So when people, tilts usually happen from the top, right? Where people come a little more relaxed. They're not really following what they need to be doing. So then how do we as traders pause, right? If you take a big hit, whether it was it happened or it was a bad beat or whatever you want to say, there's still residue from that trade. So then how are we able to acknowledge that, recover and reset? Now, listen, sometimes it's the second trade that gets you, right? Where you're starting to react. But a great way to combat that is a daily reset. Like, let's say you had a great day. Reset, 0-0. Get back to that even ground, right? I feel good. I did this well. How do I get better? If it's a bad day, get into the body. Go take a walk. Down regulate your mind. All right, that sucked. That was a bad day. All right, I feel it. What do I need to do tomorrow? Where does my mind need to be? Where do I need to slow down? And the biggest thing here is people tend to become more cautious, which feeds sometimes into impulsivity. Don't be cautious. Be more conscious of what you're doing, right? Because when we're cautious, we're defensive, right? And that means sometimes when we're defensive, we're what? We're reactive, right? We talk a lot about something called aggressive patience. So what is aggressive patience? Aggressive patience, we know what patience is, right? Be patient in the trade. But often patience sounds very defensive. Aggressive patience is almost like a jaguar in the brush waiting, right? All systems go. You can almost feel their breath. They're ready to strike. So if we're able, whether it's a drawdown or whether it's a normal day, to really be able to sit with ourselves and have that breath, to what am I trying to accomplish here? Where do I need to be, right? As you're waiting, right? That's aggressive patience, right? I'm fluid, I'm relaxed, I'm not rigid, but I'm ready, right? I've done my prep, right? I've trained my body, my mind. Now I'm ready, right? That's a great place to be. So when we go down to these, whether it's a win or a loss, how do we get back to that aggressive patience? How do we down regulate? So we're in a position to make the best decisions. And ready for this one? Again and again and again, until it becomes our default network in our brain. Always. Right? Even, as a coach and I invest in companies, I'm always like, hey, slow down. Okay, where do we need to be? How do I need to be thinking right now? Where am I? How am I feeling right now? Oh, I feel stiff. All right, get up, move your body a little bit, right? I'm feeling a little fight or flight. All right, down regulate, Ev. Literally, I'm saying this to myself. So if you ever see people I work with, they speak to themselves because thinking it is different than verbalizing it. Because when it leaves our mouth, not that, you can't see words, but you're able to see the experience in the words. You can hear it, you can feel it, and it gives us a better opportunity to make a better decision. It's out there, it's in front of us, right? It's not behind, it's not in the darkness. So what happens, you'll see a lot of people talking to themselves. I feel this way. What should I be doing here? That's really a great way to become more conscious. And it's out, it's in front of you, right? We could pick up on the words we use, and it just gives us more data.
A lot of traders are gonna have to make decisions under pressure or like with limited time. How do you train yourself to make the right decisions with either limited time, under pressure, or like when you're trying to take a trade really fast?
Well, listen, pressure is a privilege, right? There's a utility of sitting in this seat that you can actually make a very good living. But too much pressure feels almost chaotic, right? We jump the gun, we react. So we all have to know where we lie in this pressure scale, right? I want all my people to be uncomfortable, but not so much pressure where we're almost paralyzed to make a decision. So we have to recognize at what level of pressure am I optimal, right? No pressure, there's pressure always. So how are we able to perform within that realm of pressure? We're all different, right? We all have different scales. So to recognize that, say, you know what, this is a lot of pressure. I got to make these decisions quick. Acknowledge that. But the next question should be, how do I get better in these situations to make my best decisions? Am I breathing? Am I down regulating? Am I training myself that when all this data is coming at me, whether it's time related, well, it's usually time related, right? How fast am I making decisions? How quickly am I responding and not reacting? That's just training, right? But it's training with an intentionality that these moments come. I can visualize them. How do I want to be performing in these situations? And what does that look like? And what does that feel like? It's like I could see you thinking about it, right? It's true. Like you're visualizing, it's okay, this is how I want to perform. Okay. And now that's repetition. It's mental training, right? Because you know what it's interesting is that we don't have the app that tells us when this happens. We don't have the app where, oh no, here comes an obstacle, hurdle, emergency, and challenge. We don't have that. Nobody has that. So as opposed to always thinking positive, right, which can be toxic sometimes, I want to be in the seat of being opportunistically realistic with a positive attitude. That what did I do today and how do I get better? If this happens, how do I want to respond? Right? Because things happen. That's reality. So how quickly can I get my internal footing back to make another good decision? That's true, right? Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, totally, for sure. I mean, a lot of people are getting hijacked by their feelings and by kind of emotions in the moment. Then they realize too late that they made a mistake. But I think, like you mentioned, it's a key to be able to take a step back and stop there, and then try to, like you said, down-regulate to make the right decisions from there. So totally.
And that's just training, right? So then the latency between emotions and conscious behavior gets shorter and shorter and shorter, right? The more you do it. And then what happened, the experiences now, so when the brain's predicting the future, what could happen, right? Catastrophe, this, we're like, wait a second, I've done this before. So we're able to draw. That's why, when you hear people say, give yourself a little bit of credit, it's true. We know neurologically now, giving yourself a little credit, not a big cheerleading party, a little bit of credit actually helps in the formation of the circuitry. Right. But it can't be like overwhelmingly, right? Because the opposite of I did amazing is I did pathetically. I did horribly. So you really want to watch how you feed yourself via words, right? And we want to be operating. I'm not saying we're not allowed to be excited, but we want to pick up on what is the emotion I'm feeling right now, right? It's almost like if you're in a position and it's working, you feel great and it's really moving and you're excited. Well, you got to acknowledge, hey, I'm feeling excited, but where should I be making decisions now? Right? Because now that excitement's on the field, not selling anything, and you don't make that tick when you should. So how do you say, I'm feeling extremely excited right now, but I know when I'm excited, I don't make the best decisions. So one, let's say I feel euphoric, let's say, right? It's an emotion. All right, I'm feeling euphoric right now, space. What's the best decision I have to make here? Right? So now that euphoria is not on the field, when you should actually be doing something possibly, but now you've given yourself that space to make a conscious decision. And that's on the other side as well, in panic.
How do you train someone to scale up in trading? Let's say they've been trading a certain size, they're used to it, they want to be able to manage more capital. What steps do they got to take to get to that next level?
I call it stretching, right? So let's say you trade, I don't know, let's say 1,000 shares to make it easy. And we feel like we've been consistent. What's the next step? Well, the first thing I think about is, okay, what is he or she willing to handle on the drawdown, right? It's not how much money you can trade. The question is, when it goes against you, are you reacting or are you responding? I got to know that first. What are they able to tolerate on the downside, right? Anybody can tolerate something on the upside. Well, maybe not sometimes, but usually they can. So if I know that we can lose 100 grand and it doesn't shake our foundation, then it's like, okay, instead of trading 1,000, 100,000, whatever the number is, let's go to 1.25 now. Because if we go down, if we're go down money, I want to know how you're responding to that. right? So then we're comfortable. We're making best decisions still, even though when it's against us. All right, now we can get bigger. So it's really, you just don't get bigger to get bigger, right? Because if you do that and you get knocked in the head, everything you've done before that, we lose confidence in what we're capable of doing. So instead of snapping people, you've got to stretch them. But I got to know what they're comfortable like on the downside.
I got to ask, so what happens if you do lose confidence? How do you get back on track from that?
That's a great question. Great question. So when I said earlier in the conversation, okay, what did I do well today and how do I get better? So we all lose confidence sometimes, right? So whether you take that proverbial break, let me just take a step back. All right, I don't feel confident right now. When have I felt confident before and what did that look like? Right? You go back into that visualization. So when I said earlier, give yourself a little bit of credit, that's when you tap into that. All right, my footing's not solid right now. I'm not feeling confident. I got knocked around a little bit. All right, let's put some space in. What does it look like to perform optimally? Right? And you don't jump into the deep end. All right, let's gradually put space from where we are here now to where we need to go. Right? So let's say you're down money and the confidence is eroding. Let's put a little space in. Let's have some small wins, meaning performance-wise, not dollar-wise, that we start building back that confidence. But notice where we are and where we want to go. That little space causes momentum, and then we're back on. Right? So, I work with people, if we're wrong, right? All right, where are we right now? I'm shaken. All right, let's think about performance here. Let's try to put good behaviors together, right? Which sometimes means obviously decent P&L. And let's start putting a little space from where we feel right now to where we want to go. Right? And then what happens, right? Then all of a sudden you start to build this momentum. And what happens when you build positive momentum? You start building back what? Confidence. It's not making it all back in one thing, right? Because that's a hope. It's not a strategy. It's not a mental strategy. All this is important. When you think about trading and all the things we're discussing here, this has to be in your arsenal. Because there's other people doing this and they're sitting at the same table as you. So if you have the opportunity to do this, why not? Like if you want to be really good at this game, in any game, whether it's athletics, business, or this, there is a mental side to this, right? There has to be. We all have emotions. The question is who can down-regulate and make best decisions with them.
Love that. Tell me if people can connect with you or find out more about your work after this podcast.
So once again, my name's Evan Marks. I'm the founder of the M1 Performance Group. We're a mental coaching group, mental performance coaching. My website is m1performancegroup.com. I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all those things. And I actually, if you go to my LinkedIn site or onto my website, I do offer free discovery calls if you'd like to have a chat with me and see if this sort of work can actually really help you, which I do think it can. So once again, it's m1performancegroup.com. There's a discovery button on that website and also on my LinkedIn page, which is Evan Marks on LinkedIn. And we have content 4 times a week. And we think it's pretty good. So, take a look and then tell me what you think. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Definitely pretty good. We'll leave the link below. People can check it out. You do some good work out there for sure. So we'll leave the link below in the description. The podcast show notes. People can reach out to you there. Evan, I appreciate your time here. It's been really good advice. We could talk about this for hours probably, but I really appreciate the time you gave here for the podcast for sure. And we'll try to bring you back on and discuss more mindset in the future.
Awesome. I want to say thank you very much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Appreciate it.